Hi everybody, I'm Johnny. I am a working musician living in Scotland, and you're here because you want to know how to make money through music and how to become a working musician. So I'm going to give you some pros, cons and top tips on how to make that happen. Let's get into it. So firstly, some pros I want to talk about. The first pro is obvious. You get to do what you love for a living. Music is my passion. It has been since I came into high school, and all I've wanted to do since then was make a living through music in some capacity, and I get to do that now, which is very fulfilling and makes me extremely happy. The second pro is working fewer hours for better pay. The hourly rate is higher. Now, we will talk about the balance a little later on about higher pay, fewer hours, or more hours, fewer pay. We will get into that. The third pro is you have career freedom and you can become your own boss. This means you can take holidays when you want. You can take time off if you really need it. If something happens in your personal life and you feel like you really need some space, you don't have to ask anyone permission for that. You can just make that happen. It does involve a little bit more admin, but again, there's more to that, which we will get into later on. Fourth is you get to build new relationships, not just with other musicians, but with people that you never would have met before. The number of people I've met at weddings that have had incredible stories, the number of musicians I've met that are extremely talented and made me become a better musician in myself. Countless. I can't tell you the amount of people that I've met through this business that have really enriched my life. That is a massive positive. Fifth pro is you see parts of the world that you wouldn't see otherwise. Through music, I've seen every corner of my beautiful country, Scotland, which is amazing. I've also seen other countries that I never would have, other parts of other countries that I never would have went to if it wasn't for my music career. So those are just 5 pros. Among the list of many, those are the ones that definitely come to my head. But like anything, with pros also comes cons. So let's go through the cons real quick. Con number 1 is you usually work unsociable hours. If you're a gigging musician, you will be gigging Friday, Saturday most of the time if you're busy. Now this, if you have friends or family members that work a 9-to-5 job, then this is usually their socialising time and it's changed to your working time. That takes some adjusting and it makes it a little bit harder to maybe make social plans. You can just look a bit further ahead in your calendar though, you can definitely make it work. The second con is there's less income security. So with a contracted job, you've got guaranteed hours, you've got sick pay, you've got holiday pay. If you miss a gig for whatever reason, then unfortunately you're not getting paid unless it's written in a contract. But I've never come across a contract that will pay you if you're not there as a working musician. Yes, you can choose when to get time off, as I mentioned earlier. However, you're not going to get paid for that time off like you would in a contracted job. So that is something to think about also. Third is off-peak seasons. So if you're teaching music, your off-peak season is between, I would say, May and October. If you are gigging, especially in weddings, your peak season is the end of April to the beginning of October. Now, if you do both of these things, they kind of balance out. If you only do one or the other, you will have off seasons, which can be difficult to manage your money when you're not getting as much work. More on that later for sure. Another con is long drives and very late finishes. I used to think this was a massive con, the long drives. It actually turned into a pro for me. I really enjoy driving and it's kind of like my zen time. But the late finishes do take some getting used to. Wedding venues, you need to be prepared to drive anywhere for the work. Sometimes that can be 3 hours or 3 hours plus away from your home. You're ending at midnight, 12:30 on the road between 12:30 and 1 in the morning. You're sometimes getting home between 4 and 5 a.m, which can be difficult to acclimatise to. And lastly, I know this is the case in most professions, well, some professions. It is heavy lifting setting up, if you're a wedding musician or a performer, then you're going to be setting up equipment and stripping down equipment all the time. It doesn't seem like much, but if you do it enough, on enough consecutive days, it can take a toll. Now, it's not a spot on construction workers, for example. It is a fraction of what they have to do every day. I have massive admiration for people that can do physical labour jobs like that. But it does take some getting used to when you hit a peak season and you're doing it 17 times in a month, back to back. Now that I've got the pros and cons out of the way, I'm going to talk about some musts. These are unavoidable. These are things you need to have if you want to be a working musician. First is you need to be proficient on your instrument or instruments. You can't get away with being mediocre in the industry. You can, maybe not for long though. It definitely doesn't have longevity. You need to be able to learn pieces that are given to you. You need to be able to adapt on stage, on the fly. You need to be able to improvise. There are many times that people will ask for songs and requests, and sometimes it's not as easy to just say no to them. You need to be able to adapt, and an easy way to adapt on an instrument is to be completely proficient and fluent in that instrument. Another musician can spot a musician that doesn't practice from a mile away. Another must is good soft skills. You could be the best player in the country. If you're not a pleasure to be around, if you make gigs stressful, if you don't get on with anybody, if you're big-headed, if you're egotistical, no one will want to work with you regardless of your skill level. I think every musician has met someone in this industry like that they will never work again, even if they got a good result. Yes, you're there to do a job, but there are other people that can do that job, and if you have a better time with other people, then you're going to choose them. And it's the same. If you aren't a nice person to be around, if you're not kind to your bandmates, if you don't muck in, if you don't pull your weight, if you don't learn songs, if you don't help setting up equipment, if you don't help stripping down equipment, then those are just going to be little chinks in your personality that your bandmates are going to pick up on, and then word can spread. That's just how it is. Another must is you must be able to make connections. You must be able to talk to everyone and have the confidence to get contact information. Now, that is because the bigger your network is of people, especially musicians, the easier this job is going to be, the easier this career is going to be for you. I promise you. It is a skill in itself to be able to strike up conversation and get info. If you see someone with an instrument in your hand, you must go and talk to them. You're both musicians, you already have something in common. It's always a good kicking off point. And then when you talk to them, you can find out if they're full-time, how they do it. You can then speak to them. You can get contact info. Oh, if you ever need a gig covered, let me know. I've gotten a lot of work from doing this, and you will too. Next is a hard skill. It is the ability to read and write contracts, do invoices, and stay on top of taxes. This can be difficult. My top tip for that would maybe be make sure you just invoice for absolutely everything and keep a record, keep your receipts. And if you need advice on tax affairs, then you can go to an accountant. There are a few apps out there that are really helpful that some of my musician friends use as well. But that is an essential skill for this business, is keeping track of your finances and where your money is coming from. Next is you must be able to provide professional gear and equipment. If you're playing in function or wedding bands, if you're showing up and your gear just doesn't sound good, it's always malfunctioning, it's not working properly, then it makes you seem unreliable, which is probably going to hinder your possibility of getting booked again in future. This next one ties in a little bit with the previous one, is your own vehicle will definitely make life a lot easier, and it will get you more work for sure. It's not impossible to be a working musician without a vehicle, not at all. I know a few working musicians that don't drive, don't have their own car, and they still do this full time. However, a lot of venues are in the middle of nowhere, very difficult to access by public transport. I would actually go as far to say impossible to access from public transport. 90 to 95% of the venues I've played are miles from any main road, let alone any bus stop. You can get lifts with your bandmates, but being able to be easy enough just to say, yep, I'm there, I'll be there, and you can get yourself there, it's a thing that people want to hear for sure. So next, I will lead with my least favourite analogy. You need to have many fingers in many pies. So for me, I am in 3 wedding bands, 1 upcoming wedding function project that's in the works. I play pubs. I'm on 1 agent's books and have 2 other bookers, and then some residencies that I forged myself. I do private one-to-one tuition, and I do freelance teaching through an organisation that I'm very lucky to work with. Those are all the things I do to be a working musician. It's a lot. The misconception that you can do one thing and that is your full time, it is just that. It is a misconception. There are some people that do it, but exceptions don't disprove the rule. I don't know any full-time musician that just has one thing, is in one function band, or just plays pubs, or, they all have many different things going on at once. So that is a must. You are going to have to do that. And that is probably the main point that I'll tell you. You need to be involved in a lot of things to be a working musician. It's not easy to build all that stuff up, but once you do, and you can find that balance, then it's fantastic. So next, I'm going to give you some tips on how to get to that level, how to get to working musician. Please note, there's always going to be a transitional period. I delivered pizzas when I started playing weddings as well. So I was delivering pizzas 3 days a week and playing weddings twice a week, because just the weddings wasn't good enough. Through the weddings, I used one of my musts that I listed earlier. I made connections. I spoke to people, which got me into this wedding band, and then got me into that wedding band, and then got me a dep position here. And then I met this person who taught here, which got me jobs here. It just spread out like a tree root. It spread. So the start is fairly difficult, but here are some tips that will help you along the way. The first tip is to join forums and social media pages for dep work. Now, this is mainly for performance, if you want to go down the route of performance. This whole video has kind of been themed upon that, because that's the route that I took along with teaching, but primarily it was down the route of performance. So looking for dep work is really important. Dep, D-E-P. It is a good way to make connections with bands. If you can get on 4 bands' dep lists and they hit you up when their drummer or their guitarist or their bassist or their singer isn't available, whatever your specialty is, they will contact you, and then you will get that work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll become the full-time member of that band, but if you're on a dep list and people are hitting you up and they know you're reliable, trust me, word spreads about that. You get recommended to other people, and that's a great way to crack into that industry. Another thing you can do is start your own band if you're wanting to go down that performance route. So start a wedding band or a function band. For this, you're going to need reliable musicians. For a start, that's the most important. And then you're going to need a show reel. Now, some bands approach show reels differently. The majority of bands will record in the studio, and then they will film miming along to the track. A lot of people think this is cheating. On stage live performance, yeah, I would argue, yes. But for a show reel, recording straight in live on video is actually a lot rarer than you think. It's not cheating because you recorded it in the studio. It is what you sound like. It's what you're presenting to the couple. If they want more material, like live material, they can ask for that. So that's another way. And once you have your show reel, you can approach agencies, or you can put it up on social media pages and advertise yourself. The next tip this is how I actually got started playing live music, which is funny to think back about, is going to every pub or bar in your city that does live music and inquire about it. Find out who runs it. If it's run in-house through a manager, get their contact info. If it's run through an external agent, get their contact info. Have a good, concise opening message. Have videos to send them if you're going to message them. Basically make life easy for them. There's a split opinion on if you should do free trial gigs. I think it's a case by case. I did when I was younger a lot of free trial gigs, and they said, oh yeah, it'll get you more paid work. And then it never did get me more paid work, of course. If it is something like, oh, we're looking for a musician every Monday, we like the look of your stuff, but we just want to run you. Can you maybe do one Monday at half price, and then we can maybe see about getting you in for the residency? That sounds a little bit more like a goer for me. That's something that maybe I would have taken back in the day if you're just starting out. That sounds like a positive. You need to sometimes have boots on the ground, direct contact with some of these venues. Get your personality out, go in, nice smile, well dressed, put across that air of professionalism, and then just ask the question, throw as many darts as you can and see what sticks. This next point is something that I've already mentioned, and it is to talk to everyone with an instrument in their hand. The bigger your network is, the more opportunity you'll get. For example, the organisation I work with for teaching, which has got me a lot of teaching work, which is fantastic. It's meaningful work. I love it. I really do. I actually got into that because I had a friend of a friend of a friend who came to my shows for my original band when I was younger. I became friends with him. Then I saw that he did rapping, and I was like, you know what, I've always thought rapping looks really cool. So I said, oh, I want to try rapping. So I got in with him. We became really close. And then he said, oh, I work for this organisation. They're actually maybe looking for someone to do this small teaching job. It was like a once a week thing. And I said, oh, right, well, I'd be interested. So I met the head of that company, and then boom, I now do a lot of work for them. And that is just because I made friends with someone who used to come to one of my gigs because I knew that they did music in some capacity. Having a big network will pay for itself, guaranteed. So those are all my tips for you. If you found it helpful, share this video with someone that's maybe thinking about getting into the industry. As I said at the beginning of the video, it's not for everyone. Some people just want to do music as a hobby, and that's completely fine. It's a creative outlet at the end of the day. But when I personally saw that there was an opportunity to make a living from playing music, I couldn't turn that down. And the tips that I've given you are the tips that I used myself to build myself into a full-time working musician. If you're going to go on this journey, please keep me updated. Let me know how it's going, and I hope this video has helped you in some way, shape or form. Now go forth and go chase that dream. I'll see you soon.
Well, I can't believe we're talking